Formula 1 has had its share of hopeless teams. There have been underfunded outfits that scrapped together enough parts to make it onto the grid, poorly designed cars that drove like they were allergic to corners, and teams whose greatest achievement was managing to get both cars into the same shot during qualifying. But in the Grand Museum of Motorsport failure, there's one exhibit that deserves its own wing, and that's Andrea Moda Formula. This was the story of an Italian shoe tycoon who thought Formula 1 would be the perfect platform to advertise his women's footwear brand, only to discover that F1 is not a catwalk. It's the most technologically advanced and ruthlessly competitive motorsport on planet Earth, where a lack of preparation, money or understanding isn't just embarrassing, it's fatal. Now the mastermind behind this plan was Andrea Sassetti. He ran the Andrea Moda fashion label, specializing in women's shoes. And in the early 90s, he decided the sports glamour and global TV audience were exactly what his business needed. And why not? Formula 1 was dripping with style, exotic locations and corporate prestige. But there was a problem. To join Formula 1, you either needed to build a team from scratch or buy one that already existed. And that's where Scuderia Coloni enters the story. This small Italian outfit had spent the late 80s and early 90s floundering at the very back of the grid. By 1991, they had given up entirely. Their 1991 car was slow, even by pre-qualifying standards. Andrea Sassetti swooped in, buying Coloni's cars, equipment and some staff, thinking he'd simply take their place on the F1 grid for 1992. The FIA, however, pointed out a slight snag in his plan. A change in ownership meant a new team, which meant paying a $100,000 entry fee. Sassetti refused, insisting that he'd inherited Coloni's slot and shouldn't have to pay. But the people in charge at Formula 1 disagreed. But we'll get back to that. For now, let's just continue. So the chassis Sassetti intended to use was the Andrea Moda S921, designed by Nick Wirth's Simtech Engineering. On paper, it had some modern features, and it was powered by a Judd V10 engine. Not the worst choice for a small team. But the bones of the car were rooted in an old Coloni design from 1990. Visually, however, the Andrea Moda cars were stunning. They had a deep, glossy black livery, a stark contrast to the often loud sponsorship liveries of the era. The sleek black cars debuted at a 1991 motor show alongside Sassetti's first driver pairing, Italians Enrico Barteggia and Alex Caffi. In the photos, it looked like a good team. Reality, though, would prove otherwise. So the 1992 South African Grand Prix at Kyalami was the season opener. Andrea Moda showed up late without having paid the entry fee, and with cars that weren't ready. Sassetti argued with officials, but the FIA banned the team from competing. The cars turned a few aimless laps in free practice, but it was all for nothing. After being excluded from the South African Grand Prix, Sassetti eventually paid the fee and was allowed to compete. On to round 2 in Mexico. Now, this didn't go much better. In fact, it didn't go at all. The team missed the race entirely because key parts hadn't arrived. It wasn't just bad luck, it was disorganization of the highest order. By now, Sassetti was already alienating his drivers. Barteggia offered to bring additional sponsorship to the team, which is a sensible move given their dire finances, but Sassetti inexplicitly fired him instead. Soon after, Caffi was also shown the door. To replace them, Sassetti hired Roberto Moreno, a Brazilian driver who had driven for Benetton and was known for wringing performance out of dreadful machinery, and his teammate Perry McCarthy, a British driver with bags of determination and a wicked sense of humour. Unfortunately for McCarthy, there was a catch. He didn't have an FIA Super license, the official document needed to compete in Formula 1. Now, the FIA refused to grant McCarthy the license immediately, and the team made no serious effort to help him get one either. This effectively made him a driver in name only, a substitute teacher with no classroom. At the Brazilian Grand Prix, Marino managed to take the S921 out for its first proper outing, and it was, in a word, dreadful. His best lap in pre-qualifying was 15 seconds slower than the next slowest car. In Formula 1 terms, that's not a gap, it's a time zone. McCarthy didn't even get a run, lacking both a license and seemingly a working car. By now, Andrea Moda Formula had become a travelling disaster show. At the French Grand Prix, the team never even made it to the Magny course, because a trucking strike in Italy delayed their transporters. At the British Grand Prix, McCarthy finally got on track, but only in the most absurd circumstances. The team only had one set of rain tyres available, so they sent him out on them in bone-dry sunny conditions. Unsurprisingly, he failed to get anywhere near the qualifying time. The team's one and only race start came in Monaco, where the tight streets offered Marino the chance to out-qualify the absolute slowest teams. And against all odds, he scraped onto the grid. But the fairy tale lasted just 11 laps before the engine gave up, leaving Marino stranded. And that was as close as Andrea Moda would ever get to being competitive. As the season went on, the team's lack of staff became a serious problem. Mechanics came and went, equipment failed, and morale was non-existent. At one point, Sassetti resorted to flying in workers from his shoe factory to help in the paddock, specifically a mechanic and a truck driver who had no experience working in Formula 1. But it gets worse, so sit down, grab some popcorn and listen to this. So the final act of the Andrea Moda tragedy came at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. Now, before the cars could even take to the track, Belgian police arrived in the paddock with an arrest warrant for Andrea Sassetti. He was taken into custody on charges of false invoicing and fraud related to his fashion businesses. And after this, the FIA had seen enough. Andrea Moda was expelled from the championship on the spot for bringing the sport into disrepute. Their assets were seized to repay suppliers, and the team vanished from Formula 1 as quickly as it arrived. But for all of its incompetence, Andrea Moda Formula became oddly beloved by a small segment of fans. Perhaps it was the sheer audacity of the attempt, or the way the black cars looked like they belonged on the front of the grid, even if they never even left the back. Maybe it was because Sassetti, for all of his faults, genuinely seemed to believe he could make it work, despite all the evidence to the contrary. But the cold truth is that Andrea Moda was never a serious F1 team. It was a fashion marketing stunt that stumbled into the harshest competitive environment in motorsport and was chewed up almost instantly. In the years since, their 1992 season had been held up as the ultimate example of how not to run a Formula 1 team. And while Sassetti himself faded back into obscurity, the legend of Andrea Moda, with its bizarre blend of ambition, incompetence and farce, has grown. It's a reminder that in F1, image is nothing without substance, and no matter how good your car looks in a motor show, it won't matter if it's 15 seconds off the pace. But at the end of this video, please let me know what you guys thought of the video and what do you guys think of this story. If you like this story, you'd probably enjoy the story of Life F1. So go and watch it after this. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and I'll check you in the next one. Cheers,